In a small Texas town where the summer heat clings to your skin like molasses and the cicadas sing louder than the church bells, there lived a boy named Caleb. He was 15, tall for his age but painfully shy, the kind of kid who drew more in the margins of his notebooks than he ever spoke in class. He lived on the outskirts, where the paved roads ended and the field stretched into a horizon of rusted fences and forgotten orchards. That's where he first saw the dog, no collar, limp in his back leg. One ear flopped, the other half gone like it had been bitten off long ago. The townsfolk called the dog Scrap. Nobody owned him, nobody wanted him. He scrounged behind the diner and slept beneath a rusted-out tractor behind the feed store. People thought of him as a nuisance, too loud, too scrawny, too broken. But Caleb? He saw something else. Scrap would watch him when he passed on his long walks through the orchard, his tail thumping the ground slowly. Over time, Caleb started tossing him scraps from his lunch. Then, one day, he sat beside him. They didn't need words. They just existed together, two misfits who understood each other without needing to explain a thing. On one particular sweltering afternoon in late July, Caleb wandered deeper into the orchard than usual. The trees were old, their branches twisting like arthritic fingers, and beneath their shadows lay the forgotten bones of a farm long abandoned. Caleb liked it there. It was quiet, safe, but something unexpected happened. The ground gave way beneath him. He didn't even have time to yell. With a sickening thud, Caleb fell into an old irrigation well, hidden beneath a mat of weeds and dirt. The fall wasn't far, but far enough. His ankle snapped the moment he hit the bottom. Dirt crumbled from the walls above. Panic rose like bile in his throat. He screamed, but no one was near enough to hear. No one but Scrap. The little dog raced to the edge of the well. He barked. He whined. He circled the hole and peered down, frantic. Caleb looked up through the dim shaft of light and saw those familiar brown eyes staring back. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a sob. "Go get help, boy," he whispered, like it was a movie line, not expecting it to work. But Scrap didn't leave, not for hours. He stayed at the rim, barking until his voice turned hoarse. When the sun dipped behind the hills and the orchard turned ghostly gray, he finally turned and bolted. The sound of his paws crashing through brush faded into the night. The sun had long set on Caleb's first night trapped inside the old well. The air down there was cold, damp, and thick with the smell of rusted pipe and damp earth. He had screamed himself hoarse the first few hours, hoping maybe, just maybe, someone would hear him. But as night came and no one showed, terror began to settle in. He had landed hard when the ground gave out beneath him, twisting his ankle badly and hitting his shoulder against the jagged rocks as he fell. He couldn't move much, and the pain was sharp enough to make him dizzy. But above all, it was the silence that scared him most. Silence, and the fading hope that someone would find him in time. Unbeknownst to Caleb, he wasn't alone. Scrap hadn't left the little terrier, who had been trailing Caleb out of curiosity earlier that day, had seen him disappear into the earth. He hadn't understood it fully, but he knew Caleb was gone. And Scrap stayed by that hole, whining and pawing at the edge. All night long, the little dog barked, circled, barked again. Nothing. No one came, but as dawn broke over the orchard, Scrap set off running, not away, but toward help. Back in town, people were already talking. Still no sign of Caleb? A gas station clerk asked the sheriff that morning. Sheriff Daniels shook his head, bleary-eyed after little sleep. "Nothing but footprints to the orchard," he muttered. "But get this, Scrap, that stray mutt, been yapping all night out there. Crazy thing won't quit." The clerk laughed, not unkindly. "Maybe he's just lonely." Sheriff Daniels didn't laugh. Something about it was odd. That's when Scrap ran into town. He was muddy, trembling, and his paw was bleeding. Probably from sharp gravel, but clutched in his mouth was something unmistakable. A torn piece of plaid flannel. It was soaked, dirt-streaked, but there was no mistaking it. Caleb's shirt. Scrap limped right up to the sheriff, dropped the cloth at his boots, then turned and barked once, sharply, then again and again. Then he ran, not away but back toward the orchard. He stopped every few yards, turning to make sure the sheriff was following. "Wait, hold on," Daniels muttered, grabbing his coat. "Get in the truck," he called to his deputy. "I think that dog knows something." 20 minutes later, Scrap led them through the orchard. Not down the usual walking path, but through bramble and overgrown grass. He darted under low branches, squeezing between bushes with the kind of determination that stopped Daniels in his tracks. Finally, Scrap stopped beside what looked like an old thicket. At first glance, there was nothing unusual, just a patch of overgrown brush and half-buried timber. But then the sheriff heard it. Faint. A scratch. A voice. "Caleb?" he called out. A weak sound came back, raspy, almost broken. Then, silence. They tore through the brush, revealing the collapsed well hidden beneath years of leaves and branches. Daniels dropped to his knees, shouting down into the hole. A faint reply came back. "Help!" The rescue took hours. They called in the fire department, lowered ropes and a rescue harness. It was risky. Caleb was weak, dehydrated, and barely conscious by then. When they finally pulled him up, his face was pale, his lips cracked. He was barely hanging on, but he was alive. And when he opened his eyes and saw Scrap pacing nervously near the ambulance, tail wagging furiously, Caleb tried to sit up. "That's him," he croaked. "That's the dog who stayed. He was there the whole time." The town didn't know what to say. At first, they didn't believe it. That little dog? The stray that sleeps behind the diner? Are we sure? But then Caleb, still bandaged, his foot in a brace, sitting in a hospital bed, told his story. He told how Scrap had barked at the hole for hours, how he'd curled up near the edge when it got dark, how he'd tried to drop down scraps of food from Caleb's lunchbox that had fallen nearby, how, on the second day, he disappeared for a few hours, only to return and sit at the edge, ears perked like he was waiting. He had gone for help, and he had found it. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits and reporters. But what stuck most wasn't the attention. It was the quiet way. Caleb reached out his hand when Scrap came to see him. The way the dog rested his head gently on Caleb's lap, eyes soft. No barking, no jumping, just that stillness, like he understood everything. From that moment, the two were never apart. 2 weeks later, Caleb returned home. His ankle was still healing, and he moved carefully with crutches, but the strength in his voice had returned. He no longer looked like the quiet, unsure boy who once wandered the orchard alone. There was something steadier in him now, something proud, but he wasn't alone anymore. Scrap came home with him. No longer a stray, no longer the town's forgotten mutt. He was now officially Caleb's dog. He had a collar, a nameplate, a bed by the window, and a bowl, with his name painted on the side by Caleb's little sister. The boy who used to sit in silence at lunch, now walked the halls at school with a soft-spoken confidence, his story whispered like legend in every classroom. But the biggest change wasn't how people looked at Caleb. It was how they looked at Scrap. The diner owner who once chased him off the back porch now kept a bowl of water out front. The gas station clerk who used to ignore him now brought beef jerky from the shelf whenever Scrap came by with Caleb. And the sheriff, the one who first doubted the dog's cries, had a custom medal made by the town council. It was small, hand-engraved, and tied with a red ribbon to Scrap. It read, "For courage beyond measure." The ceremony was simple, just a few folding chairs on the courthouse lawn, but nearly the whole town came. They clapped when Scrap was called forward, tail wagging, ears perked. They laughed when he tried to chew the ribbon, and they cried when Caleb stepped forward, still on crutches, and knelt beside his dog. "I don't remember falling," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "But I remember waking up to him, lying near the edge, watching me, not leaving, not once." He paused, then looked down at Scrap, who rested a paw gently on his knee. "He saved my life, not just by finding help, but by being there when I needed someone most." That night, back at home, Caleb sat on the porch with Scrap curled up beside him. The stars were just coming out, and the orchard in the distance swayed gently in the wind. It could have all ended so differently, but it didn't. Because of a dog nobody wanted. Because of a heart no one thought to look at twice. And as the breeze carried the sounds of a quiet town settling in for the night, Scrap lifted his head slightly, ears twitching toward the trees. Still alert, still watching, still ready. Because some heroes don't wear capes or ride in cruisers. Some are small, some are scrappy, some are dogs with too much heart for one body to hold. If Scrap's story reminded you that courage can come in the smallest forms, we invite you to keep this light going. Subscribe to FurEver, Tide for more real and inspired stories like this. Like this video if it moved you even a little. Share it with someone who could use a little hope today. And don't miss the next story. We promise it's just as powerful. Because sometimes it's not the size of the body that matters. It's the size of the love inside it.